Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Iqbal Khan. I am the managing partner of FAM Technology Partners. At FAM, we help organizations modernize and optimize their technology investments across cloud, AI, cybersecurity, and infrastructure. Today's session, which we're very excited about, is focused on a topic that's top of mind for many organizations, understanding the financial impact of AI and how FinOps teams are adapting to manage token consumption, GPU costs, and cloud spend. I'm joined today by Jared Tobiasen from IBM Aptio, who will be serving as our MC for the session and will introduce our guest speakers, Jay Wanek and Maddie Ezel. With that, I'll hand it over to Jared. Jared, go ahead. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Iqbal, and great to be with everyone today. I am Jared Tobiasen, Director of Global Cloud Partnerships at IBM. I work across our partner ecosystem on the Apptio portfolio. I'll be your host, as Iqbal mentioned. Quick word on how today will run. I'll put a few questions to Jay and Maddie across three areas. Those areas are how AI is changing FinOps, how teams track it today, and how we rein the spend in. We will save some time for some questions at the end. And with that, I'll introduce Jay and Maddie. So, joining me first, Jay Wanek. He's the America's Vice President of Solution Consulting at Apptio. He leads the team that helps companies across the Americas stand up FinOps and get a handle on cloud and AI costs. He will be dropping a couple resources in the chat as we go, so keep an eye out for those. And then in addition to Jay, we have Matty Ezel. He's Vice President of Pre-Sales for FinOps Solutions. He works with practitioners on this every day. So between the two of them, you've got the platform view and the on-the-ground view. So let's start with the big picture. First question I want to serve to Jay and Matty is almost overnight, AI became one of the fastest growing costs on the cloud bill, and it landed on teams that have traditionally been built around servers and storage. So how has that changed the day-to-day for FinOps?
Yeah, in a couple ways. So I think the rapid rise of AI over the last 12 to 18 months has really continued a trend that was already happening. So I think for the last 2 years, FinOps has really been evolving from cloud cost management, cloud cost optimization, into a broader discipline for governing variable technology spend. So that includes things like SaaS, cloud, even on-prem cost management. And with AI, that has rapidly expanded into managing the costs of AI platforms, model providers, GPU consumptions, and now more than ever, agentic workflows, which are a totally different beast. While traditionally FinOps is focused on some core things, compute, storage, networking, cloud commitments, right sizing, AI has introduced an entirely new consumption unit known as the token. And this is a new economic model which is driven by prompts, context windows, model selection, output, retries, orchestration. There's a ton of different variables that go into how many tokens we consume, how many tokens we get back out. And while FinOps has always been a variable model of cloud spend, so the cloud has kind of already had a variable model, this is a much more granular version of that that requires real-time trending data. So waiting until the end of the month to look at your variable consumption last month is no longer sufficient way to handle this AI-driven spend. So I think it's one of the biggest changes that it's producing. And so, what has changed the most in the last 18 or 12 months of FinOps is the speed and shape of actual FinOps consumption. So like I said, we're already used to variable spend, but comparatively, the drivers were fairly understandable, right? We were thinking about things like instance hours, storage volume, data transfers, commitment coverage. AI consumption is completely different because a single business interaction or a single workflow or chat request can trigger an entire chain of model calls, retrieval steps, embeddings, cache reads, writes, and the cost is not visible as one neat line item in any of the cloud provider bills or AI provider bills. So you might even be able to understand the charge, but the real challenge is how do we map that back to a person, a product, or a business outcome that we were trying to achieve? And so with AI, every interaction or generative agentic AI system is basically decomposed into input tokens. And these could be prompts, context, system instructions, conversation history, all the backend things that go into the model, and then output tokens, which could be generated responses, tool calls, reasoning traces, and then things like cached context, routing intelligence. And that means FinOps teams must now understand not only what service, what model, what provider, but also understand why the model consumed so much, whether the right model was used, and most importantly, whether the output actually created some form of business value. And so what Jay is showing here is part of our out of the box kind of AI multi-cloud dashboard. And this just gives you a good sense of what FinOps practitioners are looking at in this space. You can see in the top right and left, there's kind of input versus output tokens consumed on something like in AWS Bedrock, in Azure Cloud Foundry, GCP, Gemini. And if we actually scroll up here, you can actually start to see, hey, which models are we consuming from? Are we consuming from Claude, Codex, Gemini, Cohere, right? And really start to get a sense for what does our AI consumption look like coming directly from these different cloud providers, whether it's AWS, Azure, GCP, or coming directly from something like Anthropic, OpenAI, or another cloud provider as well. And so the big theme I would emphasize with how AI has changed FinOps is that AI has turned FinOps into a truly real-time operating model. Traditional cloud, monthly chargeback, weekly optimization, it was kind of the best practice of what everybody did. In AI, a bad prompt pattern, a runaway agent, an excessively large context window can create a massive influx of spend, in the course of just a couple hours. That completely changes the FinOps practice, and it really elevates the importance of real-time monitoring, anomaly detection, token level attribution, and then governance and automated governance around these different AI workflows. So AI has not replaced FinOps. I think there are people that thought we were just going to do all of our FinOps tasks with AI. I don't think that's happening quite yet, but it has greatly expanded the mandate and the operational discipline required to do FinOps well. When I work with some of my customers and I show them this exact dashboard, what you see is AI spend went from $100,000 last year to $3 million this year, right? And that's an incredibly large influx of spend moving in this direction. And I think it's quickly going to become one of the top spend items in most of my customers' cloud environments over the next 12 to 24 months.
And this has created, quite a focus on tokenomics as a tagline. And you even see here, I put in the link to the FinOps Foundation and their blog area around all of these topics. Quite in depth, most of it to get ahead of this consumption. Many reports you've seen in the feeds about companies already, Uber even exploding their budget just within the first quarter for their token spend. So getting ahead of where their spend is one of the biggest challenges. And this is a discipline here that the FinOps Foundation is focused on in getting that visibility to that consumption.
That's great. Thanks for the summary. So AI is a new kind of cost. It's measured in tokens. Curious, you shared a little bit about cloudability there, but can we dive a little bit further into how teams track that AI spend today? How do you get from that raw bill to something useful like cost per token or cost per model?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, most teams are tracking their AI spend through a mix of native cloud billing data, right? A Cur file, an Azure cost export, GCP, BigQuery billing data. And then they're also leveraging additional connectors, right? Pulling data directly from Anthropic, OpenAI as individual or codecs, right? And then the big ones is custom telemetry. So I see customers using a range of native data, either across the cloud provider, directly from the AI billing products, and then actual telemetry data around usage. And the maturity here varies widely. Some teams today are still struggling just to see their high level provider spend. What do I spend on Anthropic? What do I spend on OpenAI? What do I spend on Gemini? And then more advanced teams are starting to drill into model consumption. Which models do we use? How much do they cost? And then getting into things like what is the actual cost per token, token consumption by model, and then further doing allocation on that to start to see what is the cost by application, by team, by user, or by service. I think that's where customers want and need to get to before they can arrive at a value conversation, which is, I think, where everyone would like to be over the next 12 to 18 months as well. And so the starting point for this is, the billing files, right? So in AWS, for example, you can use the cost and usage report, especially the Cur 2.0, is I think where you need to be, what you need to be using at your organization for some of these more deeper insights. So if you're on AWS and you haven't switched to Cur 2.0, make a note to go do that as soon as possible. This provides line item detail for a lot of these services. So where I'm getting this information from on this dashboard. So if you use something like Amazon Bedrock, it's kind of the classic AWS managed service for AI services where you can consume all the different models and latest things. And you'll see separate line items for token types, distinct usage types, and unit prices. And it specifically breaks out your input, your output tokens, which Jay was showing earlier, cache read writes, and you really need to account for all the different types of token spend when you look at this data, because input tokens are typically cheaper than output tokens, which are a different cost than cash tokens. It grows pretty quickly as you start to look at the data. Now, the problem is the billing data that we talked about is still only part of the story. It can show you what was billed, but it's not going to answer some of these deeper questions like what business process caused this usage, right? What user initiated this AI agent, or what application generated this request that then got passed around, 4 agents, and then returned back with a million output tokens. And so these are the types of things that you really want to start to dig into, which is where that telemetry data starts to come into play. And so that's why teams are beginning to rely on various connectors and API integrations directly into the model providers, as well as internal telemetry systems. So with AWS, again, just as an example, we can do similar things on Azure, GCP, but you can actually start to do cost attribution through IAM principal attribution and application inference profiles, projects, and even start to get down to per request tagging. And this is what's going to allow you to do things like say, hey, we built a FinOps agent here at Cloudability, right? The FinOps agent generated 200 tickets for optimization, and we executed on 100 of them, and we saved $100,000, right? But in order to do that, we spent $50,000 on the FinOps agent. So in order to get to understand what did we spend on these different agents, these different agentic workflows, and then start to understand what is the value that was produced for that. And so in the example I just gave, right, the value was $50,000 because we saved 100K, but we spent $50,000 doing it. And so these are the types of things that customers want to actually look at. And so again, to summarize, I think we're combining 3 different types of data. There is billing data directly from the cloud provider that is going to be your starting point. There is then usage telemetry. This is operational details that we can get through APIs like Anthropic, OpenAI. And this is going to include tokens, requests, model IDs, user IDs, application IDs, workflow IDs. We need to combine usage telemetry with the billing data in order to get to a more useful metric than just we spent $1 million. On what, who spent it, what was the output, where did it generate? And then finally, there's business context. This is probably the hardest part for my customers today, which is really tying into the value layer, right? This is where I might want to include which of our internal products, services, customers, right, actually leveraged this agentic workflow. And I might even look at for something like a chat bot helping with customer support tickets. What is the cost of a completed ticket? How many tickets were able to be completed by the AI agent or had to be passed off to a human? And then, of course, what was the satisfaction level, right, in that ticket completion? Did customers enjoy interfacing with the bot? Did it create friction or reduce friction? This business context is, I think, the most challenging part of what customers are starting to look for in the AI cost management world, and also the most critical.
That's great. So the good news is a lot of this is doable today with the right data, as you mentioned, Maddie. We need connectors, tagging, and the bill is a massive source, but it only shows part of the picture. There's a gap that needs to be filled with additional data that you covered there. Is there anything that was missing from that list that we need to expand on, or could we talk about the metrics that we're trying to track as well, that practitioners track typically?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess a couple of, so one thing I would say about what's missing, um, the biggest gap that you're going to see is around shared costs in your organization. And so this is kind of another level of allocation that needs to happen to accurately allocate this AI spend. Most organizations are deploying AI through things like shared gateways, shared model endpoints, shared observability stacks. And that means when you get this bill, you might be able to say we spent $1 million on Claude, we spent 500K on OpenAI, but that might land in a single cloud account, right? Or in a single group that you have. And realistically, those agents were consumed by 50 different teams across your organization, right? And so the platform team or the central IT group becomes the owner of, $1 million of spend that they did not create. And this is a very similar problem to where cloud was 4 or 5 years ago, right? Where you are seeing, as an IT group, I get the cloud bill. I want to actually show that back and eventually charge it back to the actual end consumers' applications that are consuming it. We supported them by giving them access to that technology. We did not drive up the cost. And so this is, one application might send short prompts to a small model. Another might send long prompts with retrieved documents to something like the most premium frontier model you have. And a third team might trigger an agentic workflow around this use case. And so you need the ability to not just say we spent $1 million on AI, $1 million on, Opus 4.7, but actually start to understand which teams consumed this agent or this model that we've made available. What did they use it for? And that's really where, again, the telemetry data is going to come into play. That has things like user IDs. So I can say, hey, this user is generating $20,000 a month of AI token consumption, and this other user is generating $100 a month, right? And then which business unit do they fall into? What services do they support? And things like that. So that's probably the big thing of what's missing is there is a notion of shared cost across this AI where it was built by someone and then it was used by 50 different teams. And so how do you actually build that out successfully? And if we go into the metric conversation, like what should I be tracking? So I think there's really 4 categories of metrics that I think my customers really lean on us to try to help them track, which is consumption metrics, cost metrics, efficiency metrics, and value metrics. I'll kind of give you a short description on each of those. But the most common starting points are spend by model, token consumption by model, spend by service or application, cost per request. And this is kind of where we start. As you get more mature, teams will kind of move up the stack and get into things like what is the cost per inference? What is the cost per user? In the chatbot use case I mentioned, I might look for something like what is the cost per resolved case, and what is the value delivered by the AI use case. So are some of the big areas that we'll see. And I think we also have a kind of a visualization of this chatbot use case that we can show off as well. But to dive a little bit deeper while we pull that up, I think the first category is model level metrics. So teams want to know which model is driving spend, how token consumption is trending, how input and output tokens ratio differ, and whether we're using the right model on the right task. And we'll talk a lot about that when it comes to optimizing your AI spend as well. The second category is service level metrics. And so this is where something like the custom chatbot or support desk use case becomes important. Rather than looking at OpenAI or Bedrock spend, I want to see what do we spend on our support assistant? What do we spend on our developer assistant, right? And the different types of AI agents we might build. And so this is a
Right.
great use case. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. So being able to track the outcome of what you're deploying AI for is one of those areas of focus. So instead of a broad goal with deploying AI, we're seeing successful strategies being toward more focused efforts around processes that are enabled through an AI deployment. And able to track that process, you'd want to be able to track how you're doing it today and what's changed with AI. Here's an example around tracking a support desk and applying AI for tier one type of capabilities of handling support desk calls for tier one type calls versus tier two and tier three. And so we're tracking here the number of calls from the call center, but then also understanding where AI is deployed and the impact it has. So here we have a tier one AI agent increasing in spend, and then we see the tier one human interaction coming down or reducing in quantity. So now you're tracking the deployment and the outcome and showing the impact of both. Are you achieving that outcome? And of course, the overlaying concern also would be cost. Are we reducing cost as we're handling more volumes with AI? And can we shift more work to tier two and tier three agents? Now, that's a result of having metrics tracked. So the topic is, what kind of metrics are people tracking? Well, it's going to be metrics around the outcome of AI that you're deploying it for. So it's not only the consumption of it, but where is it being applied, and are those metrics being affected by that deployment?
That's great. Appreciate the demo there. So what about reining in AI spend? Once you can see it, what do you do to bring it down?
Yeah. So this is top of mind. Everyone kind of asks me, hey, is there a way to just optimize my AI bill, right? Like I used to be able to right size a cloud VM. Can you show me a right sizing engine for AI? And the answer is, unfortunately, today it's not quite that simple. So I think my customers that have had success reining in their AI spend, in order to do that, they really needed real-time monitoring, which I hit on at the very beginning, show back or chargeback. You have to make these costs real to your consumers. And then they need governance and education. And so my goal is not to slow AI adoption, but it's to make sure that AI adoption is something financially sustainable. People talk all the time about how right now a lot of investors are kind of subsidizing the AI token market, and there's a real probability that these costs potentially go up, especially as these models get more and more advanced, or as agentic workflows begin to take over more and call more data, create more tokens for the work that they do. And so we need to make sure that we're owning our AI spend today, so that if costs go up, same with the cloud provider, right? That we're going to be able to handle that increase and still get what we need out of it. And so the first step is really visibility. Like for most of my engineers, even that work here at IBM, a lot of times these tools seem to be free, right? It's the same problem we had with cloud back in the day. I can just log in, spin up a VM, get what I need, everything works. except you're paying hourly for that VM and it's 3 times the size it needs to be. We've kind of rained on down that problem a little bit over the last 5 or 6 years, but this AI problem is the exact same thing again. You give a team of engineers a new IDE coding tool that you want them to use, and it's happened to me here. Me and 15 other engineers all built the same commitment tracker app that was all personalized, and we all had it, going through our emails, tracking everything we did. It's an awesome use case for AI. But do we really need 500 engineers burning 1 million tokens each on the exact same, web tracker app that we all built? And so when these tools seem free, we will use a lot of them, right? You can do a lot of cool stuff with AI. It's fun to tinker. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, well, and to that point, it's that article I posted that linked towards this idea of token maxing. So without a better outcome that you're applying AI for, what you're doing is encouraging use and you're tracking use. And if you can track your use, then you're saying, hey, we're being successful. That's obviously not a successful strategy. Token maxing is essentially blowing through your budget on tokens. And to Maddie's point, 50 people doing exactly the same thing, trying to learn and test things out, but not really getting an outcome.
Yeah. And so that's where a lot of my customers are today, where we actually want them to do that because we're trying to enable our teams on these AI tools. But that at some point has to get reined in, right? And so when this spend reaches $20 million a year, we probably don't want 100 engineers all building the same tool just to play around with these tools. And so again, real-time visibility, the ability to identify anomalies, understand the cost impact of what they're building and how they're building it is the number one thing you can do to make this spend go down. Same thing was true in the cloud. Like engineers would spend $1 million a month because they didn't know they were spending $1 million a month. They tend to be very efficient minded and organizational people. If you show an engineer that these random tools that they built for fun cost you $300,000, they're probably going to do something differently next time, right? So real time visibility is step one to just the Prius effect. When you see it, you consume less. It's just a natural human reaction. The second step is, working on these allocation models to build a real showback and eventually a chargeback mechanism. Again, now that I can see it in real time, my bosses get a report every month of how much I'm spending. What does it cost us to run these different AI services? Even without chargeback, this creates awareness and immediately makes teams consider what they're doing and understanding trends. Chargeback becomes really important again as that spend increases from 3 million a year to 5 million to 10 million. Eventually, we need to bill back the different teams that are using this, or else your IT spend is going to balloon and you're going to keep asking the IT team to drive spend down when they're not the ones using these tools at all. It's not something they can do. The third thing is governance. So I would highly recommend considering putting some guardrails and then just rules of the road on your AI initiative. So things like model selection policies, what types of tasks get, the highest end frontier model, the Fable, the Opus, right? And what are things that should be done with Sonnet, Haiku, 5.3 instead of 5.5 in the Codex world. This is a very important part of managing your AI spend. If you are using the latest and greatest frontier model to build a weather tracking app, it's just not something you need to do. And it's going to cost you significantly as you do that. The other things my teams are doing is obviously approve providers, right? Getting enterprise level deals with a single provider instead of having Gemini, Claude, OpenAI all running simultaneously and paying full price. Budget thresholds. Again, I think a lot of my teams still want people to be creative, but hey, if you're going to spend more than $50,000 a month on these things, we're going to shut you off, right? Another way to make sure they understand it. So governance is a critical piece. And then I would say education is the next big thing. Many users, like when they get access to these tools, they don't understand how to use them. And what I mean by that is, longer context windows is going to drive your price up significantly. Repeated prompts, leveraging premium models for non-premium tasks, and setting up premium models for full agentic workflows have major cost implications that I think most developers that are not familiar with these tools may not realize. And so, we want our users to get very familiar with how these models work, but they also need to be familiar with how the pricing of these models works, because this is the average uneducated user will spend 30 to 40% more to do the same task than someone who knows how to do something like sub-agent routing, right? Plan with Opus, create 20 sub-agents with Sonnet to run things, and then when it's all done, maybe review it again with the latest frontier model. This isn't something I've figured out how to put into like a defined policy guardrail, but this is just how you need to educate your teams broadly on how these things works. And then finally, following that education, you can start doing some engineering optimization. So this is stuff like prompt optimization, model right sizing, figuring out the right way to cache, batch, and route different workflows, and controlling how many retries or how many tool calls your agentic use cases actually consume. This is a big area in tokenomics that I think is still pretty raw. I don't think we have like a defined answer for exactly how this should be done for every business, but this is the meat of how you reduce your cost, right? Today, you can't really say, hey, we're going to right size from this to that unless you just down select a model. Where you can generate savings or where you can create cost reduction is a lot of nuanced usage of these tools. So going back to visibility, governance, and education are the three things that are going to give you the best levers to reduce your AI spend today. Uh, to put it super simply, and sorry, I've probably gone long on this one, but very passionate about it. It's see it, attribute it, benchmark it, govern it, and then optimize it. I think those are the five key things that you need to think about when you want to think about reducing your AI spend.
Fantastic. That's a great summary. So really having the tools, building that culture, putting the costs in front of the people spending it, setting up those guardrails, keeping it all in check. Fantastic. Um, Appreciate that, Maddie. So we've covered really three topics here: how AI is changing FinOps, how those teams are tracking things today, and then most importantly, how to rein that spend in. We wanted to give the audience an opportunity to ask any questions that might be pertinent here. So feel free to jump into the chat and fire away on any questions. We'll take a look and get some answers here real time for you. And while we take a look, we'll give you guys a few minutes to get those inserted into the chat.
Maybe while you start, I don't see any just yet. But what would be the process, Maddie, for getting control? Like what are the couple first steps that you would do to get the visibility you were talking about at step one?
Yeah. So at a high level, I mean, again, depending on my cloud provider, I would make sure I'm looking at the cost and usage data. I have a way to visualize that, and then start setting up, the right reports and dashboards to drive into where is this AI spend happening, what cloud services, what models, what AI providers, and then going deeper into things like input and output tokens. I think that's the first thing that most teams need to do, and many teams are not yet doing today. And full shameless plug, that is exactly the kind of stuff that Cloudability can help you with out of the box. So I know, if anyone is interested, we can definitely help start you on this journey and go all the way from basic visibility into those governance and engineering optimization use cases I was talking about at the end.
Cool. How long does it take?
Uh, with Cloudability, things are out of the box. We can set up the billing data. We can start to show you. We've built predefined reports for all of this because we know it is so critical. But without Cloudability, like it is still, we could look at the billing data. You would need to kind of dive in, maybe with SQL, Athena queries, depending on your provider and how you look at that data. And I would say probably, you know, no more than maybe 6 to 10 hours to start, sussing out some of the initial AI data. If you were to kind of go about it and just start slicing it yourself as well.
Hmm. What's the biggest mistake someone might do in trying to gather this report on it Like what common mistakes might you find?
Oh, I mean, I think the biggest mistake is probably stopping at the level that the billing data allows you to. So, you can look at something and say, hey, I understand I'm spending $1,000 on Claude, right? Or I have the basic data from the cloud provider, and this is good enough. I'd say when you take that to your executive, there's almost definitely going to be immediate questions about, well, who generated all of that spend? Like, what business unit are they in? What application does it work on? Is this from just chatting with an AI bot? What agents are we consuming, and what is that cost? And so I think there's a natural starting point with that cloud billing data to understand where you are today. But the immediate next step is to start to link in some of that telemetry data, some of that API data directly from the AI vendors to get much deeper insights into how you're actually consuming these things. And this is where something like Cloudability can really help, since we have done this for a lot of other customers. We've built out ways to connect the telemetry data to the usage data. Again, something that you can definitely do on your own as well, but is going to add weeks, if not months, to that initial timeline I told you about. Getting just the raw billing data into your hands.
Okay.
Um, and
So
I
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I did see a question.
Yeah.
What is the roadmap for cloudability features in 2026, 2027? And do I think firms will build their own cloud AI cost management tool? Um, I mean, can't get into the entire roadmap, but this is a heavy area that we've focused on over the last 6 months. That's only going to continue. We've rolled out a bunch of new tokenomics features to help customers manage this type of spend, as well as automation, governance, forecasting capabilities, not just for AI, right? AI is critical, but there's still $50 million of your company spend over on regular compute is still happening as well. So rich roadmap and investment across all things FinOps, but definitely a focus on this AI stuff. And customers have already come to us and talked about building their own cloud/AI cost management tool. Customers have always been on the fence of build versus buy, so it's nothing new. I think the friction to starting the build is easier than ever with AI. But I've talked to a couple of my big customers, and one of their executives said something that really stuck with me, which is, yeah, my team comes to me every week now and shows me this really cool go-kart that they built with AI, and it demos super well. It looks like it's going to solve all of our problems. And I can tell you right now, like, the 3 to 4 go-karts we've decided to actually invest in have just spiraled from a cost perspective to maintain these things, to bring on the expertise to like continuously innovate on them. AI makes the friction to idea to POC. It's like a snap of your fingers. You can POC anything, you can build a sweet demo. I think where the rubber hits the road and what is keeping a lot of our customers engaged with Cloudability is ongoing maintenance, adding features, building something that scales and that is nine nines of reliability. That still takes an entire engineering team, even with Claude behind you. And the other thing that some of my customers have found who have ran these kind of internal POCs, if you think you're going to build a really slick dashboard and then enable it with Claude to kind of dig into your data, we talked about input tokens. A Cur file is a lot of input tokens, right? Like a 3 terabyte billing file that's updated multiple times a day. In order to really leverage AI with that type of data and start to scan and get feedback and do all the things that you want to do with something like, a Claude, it burns through your budget very, very fast. And so one of the things we've done is actually invest in rolling out our own MCP so that you can get like smaller cached byte bits of your critical information, interface it with the chatbot of your choosing without having to run, a very cost intensive LLM analysis on with a massive context window about your organization. To do that on your own becomes expensive very quickly. But I definitely think there's going to be a lot of or not customers, a lot of FinOps practitioners who leverage AI to expand on what they've built. I'm more interested in what happens 12 months from now when that bill really comes due, and if that's something that customers want to continue down the road of.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of engineering handling data that gets updated almost hourly. So you need a system to do that, and that system should be able to provide the context by which AI can perform better. And cloudability is that place that adds context to that mountain of data that's coming through your system, as well as trying to keep a history of that over all the years that you're collecting that data, being able to have a system to leverage all of that data. Um, we've also released the focus formatting, right, Maddie? So the ability to bring in telemetry data or any data in the focus format. We've now got a tool that would auto use AI to format that data. So the quickness and adaptability of bringing extra data into Cloudability is enabled through that. Pretty powerful release as well. Maybe touch on this next one. What does the POC accomplish, and what would be the next steps post POC? And we can talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit. At the end of this, we're offering this ability to bring in your tokens and give you your dashboard. Kind of that step one that Maddie was talking about, gain visibility into your token spend. Part of that can be using some of that telemetry data. Part of that could be getting views that you that are hard to get now, and then understanding how a system would work. Right? That would be the POC part. A demonstrable example using your data. Post POC, like what would that look like? Like with many of our projects, what you stand up initially gets converted into a production system in deployment. And so it also gives you that small proof that it works with your data. You understand how business rules work, views work, the visibility works, the allocations work. When you understand all that, you know how then to apply it in production, and then that system converts to leverage all those capabilities.
That's great. Yeah, and the topic of a POC is probably a great place to wrap up the Q&A and hand it back to Iqbal. I wanted to give him an opportunity to mention that FAM does have an offering that will help take this from theory to actually seeing your numbers displayed. So, with that, Iqbal, you want to talk about what FAM has to offer?
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maddie, Jay, and Jared, for sharing your insights today. And thank everyone for joining us. I think it was a very valuable session. We are going to be doing a few of these sessions, so a series of them. Stay tuned for the next session, which will be called Connecting AI with Value. So a little bit of a deeper dive there. And we should be putting that post out soon. And for those that were registered for this webinar, we'll do the same and make sure that you get the invite as well. From a next steps perspective, as Jared mentioned, over the next little while, the FAM team will be reaching out regarding a complimentary 2-week cloudability trial and assessment. As Jay mentioned, where you can play with your own data, understand the impacts to your business, and really get the full visibility around, understanding cloud optimization and the strategies around that, the opportunities around that, AI token management, and really the whole total cost of ownership strategy specific to your environment. So that's the value add from that perspective. And I think so stay tuned for that. And again, thank you everybody for joining. I think there's one more question. I don't know if we have time, but I wanted to say thank you to everyone, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. If you guys want to answer this last question, then we can close up from there. Jared, what do you think?
Maddie, you want to tackle that?
Yeah. I'm sorry, just reading the question itself. I'd say number one, we've been in this space for a long time, and I think we have some of the best thought leadership, both around regular FinOps use cases as well as AI. So when I see, why should you leverage Cloudability? I think it's a trusted and proven track record over, 15 years of helping customers manage costs in the cloud. We've been the first to release things like right sizing, savings plan automation, governance functionality, and now some of these AI services, conversational chatbots, MCPs, the AI data transformation layer that Jay mentioned. So like number one is just trust and experience in the space. We've been the top FinOps vendor, ranked by FinOps Foundation members for many years now. Number two, I would say ease of deployment. Like a lot of the things that we do with customers, I'd say 60 to 70% is configured out of the box when you log into Cloudability. We know what FinOps customers need. And again, there's always customization to get you from that 60, 70 up to 100% of what you want, and kind of building custom reports, setting up custom policies. But it's very quick and easy to get started. And then the third one I would probably say is, what's a good third one? You get to work with me. No. Um, I'd say those are my big two. I can't think of a third at the moment, but I'd say those are my big two right there: is experience and track record of delivering, and then out of the box capabilities that get you started very quickly. And then from there, we refine it into a deployment that is customized to your organization.
Great. Thank you so much, Maddie. And thank you everybody for your time. Considering that we are at the end of the session, we look forward to continuing the conversation and wishing everybody the rest of the great day. Thank you.